When discussing Toy Story 1, it is impossible to begin anywhere other than with the extraordinary voice cast and the visionary creative team that brought the film to life. Released in 1995 as the first fully computer-animated feature film, Toy Story represented not only a technical breakthrough but also a new chapter in performance for animated cinema. At the center of that achievement were the actors who gave voice and emotional depth to characters made entirely of pixels. The most recognizable voice in the film belongs to Tom Hanks, who plays Woody, the pull-string cowboy doll and longtime favorite toy of Andy. Before Toy Story, Tom Hanks had already established himself as one of the most versatile actors in Hollywood. His performances in films such as Big and Forrest Gump showcased his ability to combine humor with heartfelt sincerity. Although he was not primarily known for animation work at that time, his background in comedy and theater allowed him to approach Woody as a fully dimensional character rather than a simple cartoon figure. Hanks infused Woody with nervous energy, insecurity, leadership instincts, and deep vulnerability. His vocal performance captures Woody's arc from confident leader to jealous rival and ultimately to loyal friend. The subtle shifts in tone during moments of panic, such as when Woody realizes he may be replaced, reveal Hanks' skill in layering emotional nuance into what could have been a purely comedic role. Toy Story significantly expanded Tom Hanks' presence in family entertainment. Woody became one of the most recognizable animated characters in cinema history, and Hanks' voice became inseparable from the role. The success of Toy Story also reinforced his ability to anchor emotionally resonant stories, even in a medium driven by digital innovation. His continued participation in the sequels further cemented his association with the franchise, making Woody one of the defining roles of his career. Opposite Hanks is Tim Allen as Buzz Lightyear, the Space Ranger action figure who arrives and disrupts Woody's sense of security. Tim Allen was widely known at the time for his stand-up comedy and for starring in the television sitcom Home Improvement. His comedic persona was built around exaggerated masculinity and self-assured bravado, qualities that translated perfectly into Buzz Lightyear's character. However, what makes Allen's performance remarkable is not just the booming confidence of Buzz's declarations, but the sincerity with which he plays the character's delusion that he is a real space ranger rather than a toy. Allen's theatrical instincts and timing gave Buzz's lines an operatic grandeur, especially in moments when Buzz announces his mission or deploys his wings. Yet when the character experiences his devastating realization that he is just a toy, Allen modulates his voice to express genuine heartbreak. This emotional shift deepens the narrative and allows the audience to empathize with Buzz rather than simply laugh at him. Toy Story expanded Tim Allen's career into voice acting and established Buzz Lightyear as an iconic figure in animation history. The supporting cast also brought remarkable depth to the ensemble. Don Rickles voices Mr. Potato Head with a sharp, sarcastic tone that reflects his background as a legendary insult comic. Rickles' decades of experience in stand-up and live performance gave the character a biting wit and comedic edge. His delivery feels spontaneous and natural, as though the lines were improvised, even when carefully scripted. Mr. Potato Head's sarcasm balances Woody's anxiety and Buzz's self-importance, adding texture to the group dynamic. Wallace Shawn lends his distinctive voice to Rex, the anxious plastic dinosaur. Shawn's background in theater and intellectual drama contrasts humorously with Rex's childlike insecurity. His high-pitched, slightly neurotic delivery transforms what could have been a simple comic relief character into a sympathetic embodiment of self-doubt. Rex's constant worry about not being scary enough mirrors Woody's deeper fear of inadequacy, creating thematic resonance through vocal performance alone. The voice of Bo Peep is provided by Annie Potts, whose gentle warmth and subtle strength give the character a calm, emotional center. Though Bo Peep has less screen time than Woody or Buzz, Potts imbues her lines with quiet wisdom and reassurance. Her background in film and television drama allowed her to convey affection and encouragement with understated sincerity. John Ratzenberger voices Hen the Piggy Bank, bringing a dry humor shaped by his years on the sitcom Cheers. Ratzenberger would go on to become a recurring presence in Pixar films, earning a reputation as a kind of good luck charm for the studio. His relaxed, conversational tone grounds the fantastical premise in everyday humor. Beyond the actors, the creative leadership of Toy Story was equally transformative. The film was directed by John Lasseter, whose passion for animation began in traditional hand-drawn formats before he embraced computer technology. Lasseter believed that technology should serve story rather than overshadow it. His guiding philosophy was that audiences connect with characters, not with technical achievements. This focus on character-driven storytelling shaped every creative decision in Toy Story. The screenplay was developed by a team including Andrew Stanton, Pete Docter, and Joss Whedon. Their collaborative writing process emphasized humor layered with emotional stakes. Each writer brought different strengths. Stanton contributed narrative structure and clarity, Docter offered imaginative visual concepts, and Whedon sharpened dialogue and comedic timing. Together they crafted a script that balanced childlike wonder with adult wit. The production was overseen by Steve Jobs, who had acquired Pixar and believed deeply in the studio's potential. Jobs provided financial stability and a long-term vision that allowed the creative team to experiment boldly. His support ensured that Pixar could pursue feature-length storytelling rather than remain confined to short films or technical demonstrations. The music was composed by Randy Newman, whose warm, slightly playful musical style complemented the film's tone. Newman's background in songwriting and film scoring enabled him to create melodies that felt intimate and nostalgic rather than bombastic. His songs became integral to the emotional identity of the movie. Toy Story was produced by Pixar and distributed by Walt Disney Pictures, marking a groundbreaking collaboration between a technology-driven animation company and a legendary storytelling studio. This partnership combined Disney's legacy of character animation with Pixar's digital innovation, creating a film that felt both revolutionary and timeless. When Toy Story premiered in 1995, few could have predicted the scale of its cultural impact. It was not simply a successful animated film. It became a turning point in how audiences understood animation, family entertainment, and the emotional possibilities of digital storytelling. Over time, Toy Story grew from a technological marvel into a generational touchstone, influencing everything from children's play patterns to global pop culture conversations. As the first fully computer-animated feature film produced by Pixar and released by Walt Disney Pictures, Toy Story changed the trajectory of animation history. Before its release, hand-drawn animation dominated the industry. After Toy Story's success, computer animation rapidly became the standard. Studios around the world began investing in digital pipelines, reshaping the visual language of children's media and mainstream cinema. This shift influenced not only feature films but also television cartoons, commercials, and video games, creating an entirely new generation of animators trained in digital tools rather than pencil and paper. Beyond its technical revolution, Toy Story resonated culturally because it spoke directly to childhood imagination. The idea that toys come alive when humans are not watching is ancient and universal, but Toy Story presented it in a modern suburban setting that felt relatable to audiences worldwide. Children saw reflections of their own bedrooms in Andy's room, filled with action figures, plastic dinosaurs, board games, and stuffed animals. This relatability grounded the fantasy in everyday life, allowing children to project their own toys into the narrative. The character of Buzz Lightyear became an immediate cultural phenomenon. His catchphrase "to infinity and beyond" entered everyday language, used in school playgrounds, advertising campaigns, and even motivational speeches. The phrase symbolized boundless optimism and ambition, transcending the film itself. Buzz's sleek design and heroic posture made him a favorite among children who were already immersed in space-themed toys and science fiction media. At the same time, Woody's nostalgic cowboy identity evoked classic Western imagery, bridging generational gaps between parents who grew up with frontier stories and children drawn to futuristic heroes. Merchandise played a crucial role in the film's cultural reach. Action figures, lunchboxes, backpacks, bedding, and clothing flooded stores around the world. The demand for Buzz Lightyear toys famously outpaced supply during the holiday season following the film's release. This merchandise wave demonstrated how animated characters could function not just as fictional figures, but as lifestyle icons embedded in children's daily routines. Toy Story toys became part of birthday wish lists and classroom conversations, reinforcing the film's presence long after audiences left theaters. The soundtrack also contributed to its generational resonance. The song You've Got a Friend in Me, written and performed by Randy Newman, became synonymous with friendship itself. The song was played at school assemblies, talent shows, and family gatherings. Its simple melody and heartfelt lyrics allowed it to transcend the film, becoming a staple of childhood nostalgia. Over time, it was covered by various artists and used in commercials and television programs, further embedding it into popular culture. Toy Story also influenced the broader landscape of children's media by demonstrating that animated films could engage adults intellectually and emotionally. Its humor operated on multiple levels. Children laughed at slapstick sequences and exaggerated reactions, while adults appreciated subtle sarcasm and references woven into the dialogue. This dual-layer approach became a blueprint for future family films, encouraging studios to craft stories that respected children's intelligence while rewarding adult viewers. In global markets, Toy Story achieved remarkable success. Its themes of jealousy, friendship, and belonging translated across cultural boundaries. The film was dubbed into numerous languages, and its characters retained their emotional impact regardless of linguistic differences. The universality of toys as childhood companions meant that audiences from diverse backgrounds could relate to Woody's fear of replacement and Buzz's identity crisis. In many countries, Toy Story marked the first exposure to feature-length computer animation, shaping how international audiences perceived American animated storytelling. The film's influence extended into theme park experiences. Attractions based on Toy Story characters appeared in Disney parks, allowing visitors to step into immersive environments inspired by Andy's world. These attractions blurred the line between cinema and physical space, turning animated settings into interactive experiences. Children could ride alongside Buzz or compete in carnival-style games themed around the characters, deepening their emotional connection to the story. Toy Story also contributed to evolving conversations about identity and self-worth in children's narratives. Woody's struggle with jealousy and fear of being replaced reflects real childhood anxieties about attention and belonging. Buzz's realization that he is not a real space ranger, but a toy invites reflection on self-acceptance and redefining purpose. These themes resonated with parents seeking stories that offered emotional lessons without moralizing lectures. The film suggested that identity is not fixed by external labels, but shaped by relationships and personal growth. In educational contexts, Toy Story has been referenced as a case study in technological innovation and storytelling. Film schools analyze it as the moment when digital animation proved it could sustain feature-length emotional arcs. Business courses examine its marketing strategies and cross-promotional partnerships. Cultural studies programs discuss its portrayal of consumer culture through the lens of toys as commodities and companions. Over time, Toy Story became a generational marker. Those who were children in 1995 often describe it as one of their earliest cinematic memories. As they grew older, sequels allowed them to revisit the characters at different stages of life. This continuity created a shared cultural experience spanning decades. Parents who grew up with Woody and Buzz later introduced the film to their own children, transforming it into a multi-generational ritual. Internet culture further amplified its reach. Memes referencing Buzz's dramatic poses or Woody's anxious expressions circulated widely. Social media trends used clips and quotes to express feelings of overconfidence or rivalry. Even in digital spaces far removed from the original theatrical release, Toy Story maintained relevance through humor and nostalgia. The film also influenced discussions about representation in subtle ways. Although its main characters are toys, the human setting reflects a diverse suburban environment. The absence of a traditional fairy tale princess narrative signaled a shift away from gendered storytelling conventions that had dominated earlier animated classics. Instead of focusing on romance, the story centers on friendship and community. This focus broadened the scope of what children's animation could explore. The making of Toy Story was as dramatic and transformative as the story unfolding on screen. Behind its colorful characters and playful humor was a production process filled with technological experimentation, creative disagreements, major rewrites, and moments of genuine uncertainty. As the first fully computer-animated feature film produced by Pixar and released by Walt Disney Pictures, the project required not only artistic vision but also the invention of entirely new methods of filmmaking. In the early stages of development, Toy Story was far from the warm and emotionally resonant film audiences know today. The concept of toys coming to life had existed in various forms, but translating that idea into a feature-length narrative proved challenging. Initial drafts of the screenplay portrayed Woody as a far more sarcastic and even antagonistic character. His jealousy toward Buzz Lightyear was sharper, bordering on cruelty. During early test screenings and internal reviews, the creative team realized that this version of Woody was difficult to like. The emotional core of the story was missing. This realization led to what is often described as a pivotal moment in the film's production. The story was temporarily halted and reworked. The writing team, which included Andrew Stanton, Pete Docter, and Joss Whedon, collaborated intensely to reshape Woody into a more sympathetic figure. Instead of a bitter tyrant, he became a flawed but fundamentally caring leader. This rewrite transformed the dynamic between Woody and Buzz from simple rivalry into a story about insecurity, identity, and growth. It was a reminder that even in a technically groundbreaking project, character remained the most important element. The voice recording process was equally innovative. Unlike many traditional animated films where actors record separately, Toy Story encouraged a more interactive approach. Tom Hanks and Tim Allen recorded much of their dialogue in ways that allowed for natural rhythm and timing. The animators then studied these recordings frame by frame. Subtle pauses, changes in pitch, and improvised inflections influenced facial expressions and body language in the final animation. Rather than forcing performances to match pre-existing movements, the animation was built around the actors' vocal choices. There were moments of improvisation that shaped key scenes. For example, certain comedic exchanges between Woody and Buzz were enhanced by spontaneous line readings that felt authentic and conversational. The animators responded by adjusting gestures and timing, creating a feedback loop between voice and visual performance. This collaborative process blurred the boundaries between live-action acting and digital character animation. Technologically, Toy Story required breakthroughs that had never been attempted on such a scale. The rendering software had to handle complex textures like plastic, fabric, and metal. Since the characters were toys, their material surfaces actually helped the animators. Plastic and glossy finishes were easier to simulate convincingly than realistic human skin or hair, which would have been far more difficult with mid-1990s computing power. This practical consideration influenced character design from the outset. The film relied on a proprietary rendering system developed at Pixar that allowed light to interact realistically with surfaces. Shadows, reflections, and subtle color shifts gave the world depth and dimension. However, rendering each frame required enormous processing time. Entire rooms of computers worked continuously to produce seconds of finished animation. If a lighting change was made, scenes often had to be rendered again, sometimes taking hours per frame. This slow pace demanded careful planning and patience from the entire team. Animation itself followed a detailed pipeline. Storyboard artists sketched sequences that mapped out the narrative visually. These boards were assembled into rough video versions known as animatics, allowing the team to evaluate pacing and emotional clarity before committing to full animation. This stage was crucial, especially during the rewrite period, because it allowed the filmmakers to test scenes quickly without expending vast computing resources. One particularly complex sequence was the chase scene involving Woody, Buzz, and the moving van. Coordinating the motion of vehicles, characters, and dynamic camera angles required sophisticated programming and precise timing. Animators had to simulate realistic physics while maintaining comedic exaggeration. The balance between believable motion and cartoon energy was carefully calibrated to keep audiences immersed without sacrificing humor. Another production challenge involved human characters. Early in development, the team attempted to animate humans with the same detail as the toys. However, The results fell into what would later be described as the uncanny valley, where characters appear almost real but subtly unsettling. The solution was to stylize human figures, simplifying facial features and expressions. This choice not only avoided technical limitations but also kept the visual focus on the toys, who were the emotional heart of the story. Music integration was another collaborative process. Composer Randy Newman worked closely with the directors to ensure that songs supported narrative progression rather than interrupting it. The opening sequence featuring You've Got a Friend in Me underwent multiple revisions to match the evolving tone of the film. Storyboard artists adjusted visuals to align with the rhythm of the song, creating a montage that establishes Woody's status as Andy's favorite toy while introducing the playful spirit of the world. Deleted concepts reveal how much the story evolved. Early drafts included darker elements and more elaborate backstories for certain characters. Some scenes were removed because they slowed pacing or shifted focus away from the central relationship between Woody and Buzz. The willingness to discard completed work demonstrated the studio's commitment to storytelling quality over production convenience. The leadership of John Lasseter was instrumental throughout this turbulent process. He fostered an environment where feedback was encouraged, even when it meant acknowledging flaws. Daily review sessions allowed animators and writers to present progress and receive constructive criticism. This culture of openness became a defining characteristic of Pixar's creative philosophy in subsequent films. There were also moments of external pressure. As a collaboration with Walt Disney Pictures, the production involved studio oversight and deadlines. At one point, concerns about tone and pacing nearly derailed the project. However, the decision to pause and revise rather than rush forward ultimately strengthened the film. The behind-the-scenes journey of Toy Story illustrates how innovation rarely follows a smooth path. It is shaped by trial and error, by creative tension, and by the courage to rethink assumptions. Animators learned how to convey emotion through digital eyes and plastic smiles. Writers refined dialogue until jealousy felt relatable rather than harsh. Engineers pushed hardware to its limits to render light bouncing off a toy's glossy surface. Toy Story unfolds with a narrative structure that is deceptively simple on the surface, yet carefully constructed to engage both children and adults. At its core, the story revolves around rivalry, displacement, and ultimately reconciliation, but the pacing and sequencing of events elevate it beyond a straightforward children's adventure. The screenplay, shaped under the direction of John Lasseter and developed at Pixar, follows a classical three-act structure while layering emotional complexity and comedic rhythm throughout. The film opens not with spectacle, but with imagination. We see Andy's bedroom transformed into a stage for a pretend Western showdown. This opening sequence is crucial because it immediately establishes Woody as the hero within Andy's inner world. The camera movement mimics live-action cinematography, creating a sense of immersion that signals to audiences that this is not a typical cartoon. Once the game ends and Andy leaves the room, the toys come to life. This transition from human perspective to toy perspective defines the narrative's central rule. Toys exist for their child, and their purpose is tied to being loved and played with. The first act focuses on stability and status. Woody is clearly the leader of the toys, organizing meetings and reassuring them about their place in Andy's life. The pacing during this section is light and playful, filled with comedic beats from characters like Mr. Potato Head and Rex. However, tension begins to build around Andy's upcoming birthday. The fear that new toys might replace old ones introduces the film's central emotional conflict. This fear is universal and immediately relatable, especially for children who worry about losing attention or affection. The inciting incident occurs with the arrival of Buzz Lightyear. His dramatic entrance shifts the tone of the room and the film itself. Buzz's sleek design and confident voice contrast sharply with Woody's worn cowboy persona. Structurally, this moment marks the disruption of equilibrium. Woody's authority is challenged, not through direct hostility, but through Buzz's oblivious self-assurance. The comedic misunderstanding that Buzz believes he is a real space ranger rather than a toy adds humor while also setting up deeper questions about identity. As the second act unfolds, the rivalry between Woody and Buzz intensifies. Woody's jealousy grows more visible, culminating in the fateful moment when he attempts to knock Buzz behind the desk and accidentally sends him out the window. This scene functions as the midpoint turning point. Until now, Woody's insecurity has been mostly verbal and internal. With Buzz gone, the consequences become external and irreversible. The other toys suspect Woody of malicious intent, isolating him socially and emotionally. The narrative stakes escalate from simple rivalry to potential exile. What makes this midpoint so effective is the layering of emotional and physical jeopardy. Woody is not only losing his leadership but also facing the possibility of being left behind during Andy's move. Meanwhile, Buzz's journey outside introduces a new setting and tonal shift. The world beyond the bedroom is larger, louder, and more dangerous. The film's pacing accelerates as Woody ventures out to retrieve Buzz, leading to a series of increasingly chaotic events. The Pizza Planet sequence represents a classic adventure set piece within the second act. It expands the world of the film, introducing new characters and environments while deepening the bond between Woody and Buzz. Their arguments are comedic, but also reveal contrasting worldviews. Woody understands their nature as toys, tied to Andy's love. Buzz clings to the illusion of cosmic heroism. The humor of the alien toys and arcade machines balances the underlying tension, ensuring that the narrative remains accessible to younger viewers even as emotional stakes rise. The turning point of the second act arrives when Buzz discovers the truth about himself. Seeing a television commercial advertising Buzz Lightyear toys shatters his delusion. This moment is treated with surprising gravity. The pacing slows, allowing the weight of realization to settle. Buzz's attempted flight from the stair railing, ending in a broken arm, is both tragic and symbolic. It marks the collapse of his imagined identity. Structurally, this low point mirrors Woody's earlier humiliation. Now both characters face personal crises. The third act begins as Woody shifts from rivalry to compassion. Recognizing Buzz's despair, Woody encourages him by reframing what it means to be a toy. This emotional reconciliation forms the heart of the narrative resolution. However, the story does not conclude quietly. Instead, it launches into a high-energy rescue sequence involving the moving van and the rocket strapped to Buzz's back. This climax combines spectacle and character growth. Woody risks his own safety to save Buzz, demonstrating that he has overcome jealousy. Buzz regains confidence, not as a space ranger, but as a loyal friend. The climactic rocket scene is structured as a crescendo of escalating obstacles. First, the toys chase the moving van. Then the rocket ignites prematurely. Finally, Buzz deploys his wings, not to escape reality, but to embrace it. His declaration that this is not flying, but falling with style, encapsulates the film's thematic message. Identity is not defined by fantasy alone, but by how one adapts to reality with courage and grace. The resolution returns to a quieter domestic setting, mirroring the opening. Christmas replaces the birthday party, signaling cyclical continuity. Woody and Buzz now sit side by side, united in friendship as they anticipate new arrivals. The final line, expressing curiosity about what could be worse than a new toy, humorously sets up the possibility of further adventures while affirming the stability of their bond. Throughout the narrative, pacing alternates between fast-paced action and reflective pauses. Comedic beats are carefully timed to release tension before it becomes overwhelming. Visual storytelling carries exposition without heavy dialogue. For example, the hierarchy among toys is shown through seating arrangements and body language rather than explicit explanation. This efficiency keeps the story moving while allowing emotional arcs to unfold organically. Toy Story structure appeals to adults because it mirrors workplace and social dynamics. Woody's fear of replacement resembles professional insecurity. Buzz's identity crisis reflects existential doubt. The story's classical arc of rivalry, fall, growth, and redemption resonates across age groups. Children may focus on adventure and humor, while adults perceive deeper commentary on change and acceptance. Beneath its colorful surface and playful humor, Toy Story is a deeply reflective film about identity, belonging, change, and emotional growth. What appears at first to be a simple adventure about toys coming to life gradually reveals itself as a layered meditation on insecurity, loyalty, and the fear of being replaced. The emotional power of the film lies not in its spectacle, but in how carefully it explores universal human experiences through the perspective of animated objects. One of the central themes is identity. Both Woody and Buzz struggle with understanding who they are and what defines their value. Woody begins the story confident in his role as Andy's favorite toy. His identity is built on external validation. He is the leader because he is loved the most. When Buzz arrives and instantly captures Andy's attention, Woody's sense of self begins to unravel. This reflects a deeply human fear. If someone new takes our place, what does that mean about our worth? Woody's jealousy is not portrayed as villainous, but as painfully relatable. He does not want to lose his importance. He fears becoming obsolete. This theme resonates strongly in a modern world where change is constant and competition feels unavoidable. Children may experience it as sibling rivalry or shifting friendships. Adults may interpret it as professional displacement or aging. The film suggests that identity built solely on being first or best is fragile. When Woody eventually accepts that his value does not depend on exclusivity, he grows into a more secure version of himself. Buzz's identity crisis operates differently. Unlike Woody, Buzz begins the film with absolute certainty. He believes he is a real space ranger on an intergalactic mission. His confidence borders on delusion, yet it also provides him with strength and purpose. When he discovers through a television commercial that he is merely one of many identical toys, his sense of uniqueness collapses. The scene in which he sits motionless, arm broken, staring at the label on his foot is one of the most emotionally vulnerable moments in animated cinema. Buzz's journey explores the theme of self-acceptance. He must redefine himself not as a hero from outer space, but as a toy with a different kind of mission. This transformation reflects a broader message about adjusting expectations and finding meaning within reality rather than fantasy. The film does not mock Buzz for dreaming big. Instead, it honors his imagination while guiding him toward a grounded understanding of purpose. When he declares that flying is falling with style, it symbolizes embracing limitation with courage. Friendship forms the emotional backbone of the narrative. At first, Woody and Buzz are rivals. Their relationship is driven by insecurity and misunderstanding. However, adversity forces them to rely on one another. Stranded outside the safety of Andy's room, they must cooperate to survive. The shift from rivalry to partnership is gradual and believable. It demonstrates that empathy often emerges through shared struggle. The song You've Got a Friend in Me, performed by Randy Newman, reinforces this theme musically. Its lyrics emphasize loyalty that persists despite change or hardship. The message is simple but profound. Friendship is not conditional on status or novelty. It is rooted in mutual support. By the end of the film, Woody and Buzz no longer compete for Andy's attention. They celebrate their bond with each other, suggesting that relationships between equals can be as meaningful as relationships defined by hierarchy. Another powerful theme is the fear of obsolescence. The toys live with constant anxiety about being replaced, broken, or discarded. This reflects consumer culture, where objects are frequently updated and forgotten. But it also mirrors human anxieties about aging and relevance. Woody's panic before Andy's birthday party illustrates how anticipation of change can be more distressing than change itself. The film gently encourages resilience. Even when circumstances shift, connection and adaptability provide stability. The character of Sid, the neighbor who destroys toys for fun, introduces a darker exploration of cruelty and misunderstanding. Sid does not see toys as companions, but as disposable objects. However, the film avoids portraying him as purely evil. He is imaginative in his own chaotic way, reconstructing toys into strange hybrids. The difference lies in empathy. Sid lacks awareness of the toys' inner lives. This contrast underscores a moral lesson about respect for what we cannot fully understand. Treating others, even inanimate representations, with care becomes symbolic of broader compassion. Family bonds also play a subtle but important role. Although Andy is not aware of the toy's secret world, his love gives their lives meaning. The toy's dedication to returning to him reflects unconditional attachment. This dynamic highlights the reciprocal nature of love. Andy treasures his toys, and they treasure him in return. The move to a new house symbolizes transitions in childhood, reminding viewers that growth inevitably involves letting go while carrying memories forward. Courage emerges as another central moral value. Woody must confront his own flaws and admit responsibility for Buzz's fall. Buzz must face the painful truth about his identity. Both characters choose bravery not through physical strength, but through emotional honesty. The climactic rescue sequence is thrilling, yet its true significance lies in the decision to act selflessly. Woody risks losing his place entirely to save Buzz. In doing so, he proves that leadership is not about control but about sacrifice. Toy Story also explores destiny and free will. At first glance, the toys seem bound by their roles. Woody is a cowboy. Buzz is a space ranger. Their designs dictate their perceived purposes. Yet the story suggests that identity is flexible. Woody does not have to remain insecure, and Buzz does not have to cling to fantasy. They redefine themselves through choice. This message encourages viewers to question rigid labels and embrace growth. The film balances fantasy adventure with emotional lessons by embedding morality within character development rather than overt instruction. There are no lengthy speeches explaining the moral. Instead, lessons are demonstrated through action and consequence. Jealousy leads to isolation. Honesty restores trust. Cooperation enables survival. This subtlety allows the film to resonate without feeling didactic. Toy Story stands as a landmark not only because of its narrative and emotional depth, but because of its revolutionary animation style. As the first fully computer-animated feature film created by Pixar and released by Walt Disney Pictures, it introduced audiences to a new visual language. This was not hand-drawn ink and paint animation layered over painted backgrounds. It was a three-dimensional digital world constructed from polygons, virtual cameras, simulated lighting, and computer-generated textures. Yet despite the technological novelty, the film's visual storytelling never loses sight of character and emotion. The animation style of Toy Story is rooted in the physical qualities of its characters. Because the protagonists are toys, their surfaces are made of plastic, fabric, metal, and rubber. This material choice was both an artistic and practical decision. In the mid-1990s, rendering realistic human skin and hair was extremely difficult. Plastic, however, reflects light in predictable ways. The glossy sheen on Buzz Lightyear's suit or the smooth finish of Mr. Potato Head's body allowed animators to create convincing textures within the limits of available computing power. Instead of seeing these limits as constraints, the creative team embraced them as stylistic strengths. Character design plays a crucial role in communicating personality. Woody's tall, lanky frame reflects his slightly anxious energy. His large eyes and movable eyebrows allow for expressive reactions, especially during moments of jealousy or fear. His cowboy hat and stitched vest evoke nostalgia, visually linking him to classic Western imagery. In contrast, Buzz Lightyear's design is rounded and solid. His chest plate is broad, his stance upright and heroic. The bright white and green color palette suggests futurism and confidence. Without a single word spoken, their silhouettes alone communicate opposition. Woody is flexible and slightly fragile. Buzz is sturdy and symmetrical. Color palette functions as an emotional guide throughout the film. Andy's bedroom is warm and inviting, filled with primary colors that evoke childhood innocence. The blue sky wallpaper creates an atmosphere of openness and imagination. When the story moves into darker spaces, such as Sid's room, the palette shifts dramatically. Shadows become harsher, tones more muted and greenish. Sid's environment is cluttered and chaotic, visually reinforcing his unpredictable nature. This contrast between spaces underscores the stakes of the toy's journey. Leaving Andy's room means entering uncertainty. Lighting design is another breakthrough element. Toy Story employs virtual lighting techniques that simulate the behavior of real-world light. Sunlight streaming through the bedroom window creates soft shadows and warm highlights. At night, cooler tones and dimmer illumination convey vulnerability and suspense. During the climactic rocket sequence, rapid shifts in brightness and flickering sparks intensify the sense of danger. These lighting choices are not merely decorative. They guide emotional response and shape narrative tension. The use of a virtual camera allowed filmmakers to move through space in ways impossible in traditional hand-drawn animation. Sweeping tracking shots follow toys across the floor, under furniture, and through outdoor environments. The camera often adopts low angles at toy height, reinforcing perspective and immersion. This choice grounds the audience in the toy's world. Everyday objects such as door handles or staircases appear monumental from their viewpoint, turning ordinary spaces into epic landscapes. Facial animation in Toy Story was groundbreaking for its time. Animators developed digital rigs that allowed characters to display subtle changes in expression. Woody's eyes widen slightly before a lie. Buzz's jaw tightens when his identity is questioned. Rex's trembling posture conveys anxiety even before he speaks. These micro-expressions create emotional authenticity. The audience responds not to exaggerated cartoon faces, but to recognizable human feelings translated into plastic features. Movement is carefully calibrated to reflect each character's physical construction. Woody's limbs bend fluidly, his cloth body allowing for slightly floppy gestures. Buzz's movements are more mechanical and deliberate, as though guided by internal joints and springs. Mr. Potato Head's detachable features create comedic possibilities, with eyes and limbs popping off at unexpected moments. The animators studied real toys to understand how they might realistically behave while still maintaining expressive flexibility. Environmental design extends storytelling beyond character performance. The layout of Andy's room suggests a world of imagination and comfort. Posters on the wall hint at Andy's interests. The arrangement of toys indicates hierarchy and social structure. Pizza Planet introduces a neon-lit arcade aesthetic, filled with blinking machines and metallic surfaces. This environment contrasts with the soft textures of the bedroom, emphasizing the unpredictability of the outside world. Technological breakthroughs were necessary to achieve this level of detail. The rendering software developed at Pixar allowed for complex shading models that simulated how light interacts with different materials. Reflection mapping created realistic highlights on Buzz's helmet. Texture mapping added fabric patterns to Woody's clothing. Each frame required significant computational power, sometimes taking hours to render. This meticulous process ensured visual consistency and depth. Another important stylistic influence was the tradition of classical animation principles. Although Toy Story was created digitally, the animators applied concepts such as squash and stretch, anticipation, and follow-through. These principles, developed during the golden age of Disney animation, ensured that characters moved with vitality and clarity. The digital medium did not replace traditional artistry. It built upon it. Visual symbolism is subtly embedded throughout the film. Woody's string, which triggers his catchphrase, symbolizes his connection to his past and to Andy. Buzz's retractable wings represent aspiration and illusion. When Buzz loses confidence, his wings remain folded, mirroring his emotional state. Even the contrast between Woody's stitched fabric and Buzz's molded plastic can be interpreted as a metaphor for old versus new, tradition versus innovation. The film also uses scale creatively. Everyday household objects become dramatic obstacles. A staircase transforms into a towering cliff. A moving van becomes a roaring machine of separation. By exaggerating scale through camera placement and composition, the animators evoke adventure within familiar spaces. Children recognize these objects from their own homes, yet see them anew through the toy's perspective. The music and sound design of Toy Story play a vital role in shaping its emotional landscape. Rather than relying on grand musical spectacle or traditional animated musical numbers where characters burst into song, Toy Story uses music as a subtle narrative thread. The score and songs do not interrupt the story. Instead, they flow alongside it, reinforcing character development and emotional shifts with warmth and restraint. This approach was largely guided by composer and songwriter Randy Newman, whose distinctive voice and melodic sensibility gave the film its heartfelt tone. From the opening moments, music establishes the emotional foundation. You've Got a Friend in Me plays over a montage of Andy playing with Woody. The song immediately communicates loyalty and affection without heavy exposition. The lyrics emphasize companionship through changing times, suggesting that friendship is constant even as circumstances evolve. This message becomes the thematic spine of the entire narrative. Rather than having Woody declare his importance through dialogue, the song allows the audience to feel the strength of his bond with Andy. Randy Newman's songwriting style is conversational and slightly playful. His voice carries a gentle imperfection that makes the music feel intimate rather than polished to excess. This quality mirrors the film's emotional authenticity. The melody of You've Got a Friend in Me is simple and memorable, built on a rhythm that feels both relaxed and reassuring. Because the song is integrated into the opening montage rather than performed by the characters themselves, it functions almost like an emotional narrator. It frames Woody as secure and cherished, which makes his later insecurity more poignant. Another key musical moment occurs during Strange Things. This sequence accompanies Woody's growing fear that Buzz is replacing him. Unlike the warm optimism of the opening song, Strange Things has a more anxious and unsettled tone. The lyrics describe confusion and loss of familiarity, matching Woody's internal state. Musically, the tempo and arrangement create a sense of imbalance, reinforcing the emotional shift. Through song, the audience gains insight into Woody's perspective without the need for lengthy dialogue. This reinforces how music in Toy Story is used not for spectacle, but for psychological depth. The instrumental score also deserves close attention. The orchestral compositions underscore action sequences, emotional revelations, and quiet character moments with subtle precision. When Woody and Buzz argue, the music often carries playful undertones, preventing tension from becoming too heavy for younger viewers. During the revelation scene where Buzz discovers he is just a toy, the score softens into something more reflective. The pacing slows, allowing silence and minimal instrumentation to convey heartbreak. This restraint demonstrates confidence in emotional storytelling. Sound design enhances the believability of the toy world. Each character is given distinct auditory textures that match their physical makeup. Woody's movements produce soft fabric rustles and subtle wooden clicks from his pulse string mechanism. Buzz's suit emits electronic beeps and mechanical sounds when he activates features. Mr. Potato Head's detachable pieces make hollow plastic clacks when they shift or fall. These carefully crafted sound cues anchor the digital animation in tactile reality. Even though the audience knows the characters are computer-generated, the soundscape convinces them that these toys occupy physical space. The use of silence is equally important. In moments of vulnerability, the film allows quiet to speak. When Buzz sits alone after learning the truth about his identity, the absence of loud music or exaggerated effects heightens the emotional weight. This choice respects the audience's capacity for empathy. Children are given space to process sadness, while adults may reflect on deeper themes of identity and disappointment. Comedic timing is also shaped by audio cues. Quick musical stings accentuate punchlines. Exaggerated whooshes and impacts enhance slapstick without overwhelming dialogue. The Pizza Planet sequence features arcade sounds and ambient noise that create an immersive environment. The constant hum of machines and electronic chatter builds energy and chaos, contrasting sharply with the calm familiarity of Andy's bedroom. The climactic rocket sequence demonstrates how music and sound combine to elevate excitement. As Woody and Buzz chase the moving van, the tempo increases. Percussion drives momentum, while rising orchestral lines build anticipation. When the rocket ignites, the roar of fire blends with urgent musical crescendos. This layering of sound creates a sensory surge that mirrors the character's desperation and hope. When Buzz finally spreads his wings mid-flight, the music swells triumphantly, signaling emotional resolution. It is not merely a visual victory. It is an auditory one. Another subtle strength of the soundtrack is its thematic consistency. Musical motifs associated with friendship recur in different forms throughout the film. This repetition reinforces narrative unity. Even when the tone shifts from comedic to dramatic, the underlying musical language remains cohesive. It feels like one continuous emotional journey rather than a series of disconnected set pieces. Randy Newman's involvement also influenced how the film approached musical storytelling compared to earlier animated classics. Instead of multiple character-sung numbers advancing the plot, Toy Story uses songs as reflective commentary. This choice marked a shift in animated filmmaking. It suggested that music could support narrative without dominating it. This approach influenced later films from Pixar, which often favored integrated scores over traditional musical structures. The closing reprise of You've Got a Friend in Me during the end credits reinforces the film's emotional arc after witnessing rivalry, danger, and reconciliation. The audience returns to the simple assurance of friendship. The melody feels familiar yet enriched by context. It now carries the memory of struggle overcome. This cyclical use of music provides a sense of closure while leaving emotional warmth lingering. When Toy Story was released in 1995, anticipation surrounded it not only because it was a new animated film, but because it represented a technological experiment on an unprecedented scale. As the first fully computer-animated feature produced by Pixar and distributed by Walt Disney Pictures, it carried the weight of expectation from critics, industry professionals, and audiences alike. What followed was a wave of acclaim that reshaped perceptions of animation as a medium. Critics responded with enthusiasm to both the technical achievement and the emotional storytelling. Many early reviews focused on the novelty of seeing a complete feature film rendered entirely in three-dimensional computer graphics. Yet beyond admiration for its visual innovation, reviewers emphasized the film's wit, warmth, and narrative strength. Commentators frequently noted that Toy Story was not merely impressive technology, but compelling cinema. Its humor appealed to adults as much as children, and its emotional themes resonated beyond age boundaries. Box office performance confirmed this positive reception. Toy Story opened strongly and maintained steady momentum through word of mouth. Families returned for repeat viewings, and adults without children also attended out of curiosity about the new medium. Its financial success demonstrated that audiences were ready to embrace computer animation not as a gimmick, but as a viable storytelling form. The film quickly became one of the highest-grossing releases of its year, solidifying Pixar's place within mainstream cinema. Awards recognition further validated its impact. Toy Story received nominations at major ceremonies, including recognition from the Academy Awards. While it competed in traditional categories, it also received a Special Achievement Award honoring its technological breakthrough. This acknowledgement signaled that the film industry understood the magnitude of what had been accomplished. Animation was no longer confined to a separate cultural corner. It stood alongside live-action films as an artistic achievement worthy of serious consideration. Parents praised Toy Story for its layered humor and emotional intelligence. Many expressed relief that the film did not rely solely on slapstick or loud spectacle. Instead, it balanced adventure with heartfelt storytelling. The exploration of jealousy and identity felt honest rather than preachy. Educators and child development specialists noted that the film offered opportunities for conversations about change, friendship, and insecurity. Children laughed at physical comedy and imaginative scenarios, while adults appreciated subtle references and character complexity. However, no cultural milestone emerges without debate. Some critics questioned whether the shift to computer animation signaled the decline of traditional hand-drawn artistry. Fans of classic Disney films worried that digital techniques might replace the warmth of painted backgrounds and pencil-drawn characters. This conversation reflected broader anxieties about technology replacing craftsmanship. In hindsight, Toy Story did not erase traditional animation immediately, but it did accelerate an industry transformation that would eventually make computer animation dominant. There were also discussions about the film's portrayal of consumer culture. Because the characters are toys, some commentators observed that the narrative revolves around products that exist in the real world. The surge in toy sales following the film's release intensified this conversation. Skeptics suggested that the line between storytelling and merchandising was becoming increasingly blurred. Supporters countered that Toy Story used the concept of consumer goods as a framework for exploring emotional themes, not merely to promote products. Comparisons to earlier animated classics were inevitable. Films from the Disney Renaissance, such as The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast, had recently achieved critical and commercial success with sweeping musical numbers and fairy tale narratives. Toy Story differed significantly in tone and structure. It featured no traditional villain song, no romantic subplot, and no elaborate musical performances by the characters themselves. Instead, it offered a contemporary suburban setting and focused on friendship between two male protagonists. Some critics initially wondered whether this departure from fairy tale formulas would limit its appeal. The audience response proved otherwise. Children responded particularly strongly to Buzz Lightyear, whose catchphrase and heroic stance captured imaginations worldwide. Woody, while more emotionally complex, grew on viewers over time as his vulnerability became apparent. The interplay between the two characters became a highlight in reviews, with many praising the voice performances of Tom Hanks and Tim Allen for bringing depth and authenticity to animated roles. International reception mirrored domestic success. Toy Story was dubbed into multiple languages and released across global markets, where it achieved significant popularity. Critics abroad also recognized its innovative animation and universal themes. The idea of toys coming to life transcended cultural differences, allowing audiences worldwide to connect with the story's emotional core. Over time, critical reassessment has only strengthened Toy Story's reputation. Film scholars frequently cite it as a turning point in cinematic history. Retrospectives highlight how seamlessly it blends technological innovation with classical storytelling structure. Rather than aging poorly due to early computer graphics, the film's visual style retains charm because of its thoughtful design and strong character work. Some modern critics revisit Toy Story through contemporary lenses, analyzing its themes of identity and replacement within a rapidly changing technological society. The fear of obsolescence that drives Woody's jealousy resonates differently in an era defined by constant upgrades and digital disruption. This renewed interpretation demonstrates the film's thematic flexibility and enduring relevance. Audience reviews across decades reveal a consistent emotional attachment. Viewers who first saw the film as children often describe rewatching it as adults with a sense of nostalgia. They note how the story feels deeper upon revisiting it later in life. This multi-generational appreciation reinforces the film's lasting power. The legacy of Toy Story's reception extends beyond its own success. It paved the way for future animated films to be evaluated on narrative and emotional merits rather than dismissed as children's entertainment. Subsequent releases from Pixar benefited from the credibility established by Toy Story's acclaim. Critics approached later projects with serious attention, expecting sophistication rather than simplicity. The success of Toy Story did not end with its original theatrical run. Instead, it marked the beginning of one of the most influential animated franchises in cinematic history. What began as a groundbreaking experiment in computer animation evolved into a multi-decade cultural phenomenon that expanded across sequels, spin-offs, theme park attractions, merchandise empires, and cross-media storytelling. The legacy of Toy Story is not simply measured in box office numbers, but in how deeply its characters and themes embedded themselves into global entertainment. Following the overwhelming critical and commercial success of the first film, Pixar quickly began developing a sequel. Toy Story 2 was initially planned as a direct-to-video release, but as the story evolved and creative ambition grew, it was upgraded to a full theatrical feature. This decision proved pivotal. Toy Story 2 not only matched the emotional depth of its predecessor but expanded the universe by exploring Woody's origins and the idea of legacy. The sequel deepened themes of obsolescence and purpose, reflecting the natural growth of both the characters and the audience who had aged since 1995. Years later, Toy Story 3 continued the narrative, addressing themes of maturity and letting go. By this point, children who had first seen the original were entering adulthood. The third film's focus on transition and closure resonated profoundly with viewers who felt they were saying goodbye to their own childhoods. Its emotional climax became one of the most discussed moments in modern animation, demonstrating how the franchise had evolved alongside its audience. The release of Toy Story 4 further expanded the emotional scope of the series, exploring autonomy and self-determination. Rather than simply repeating earlier formulas, the franchise continued to interrogate identity and belonging. This willingness to evolve thematically contributed to its enduring relevance. Beyond direct sequels, the Toy Story universe expanded into short films and television specials. Characters appeared in holiday-themed specials, spin-off adventures, and cameo appearances in other Pixar productions. These smaller projects kept the characters present in popular culture between major releases, reinforcing their familiarity and warmth. One notable spin-off is Lightyear, which reimagined Buzz Lightyear not as a toy, but as the fictional space hero who inspired the toy line within the Toy Story universe. This meta-narrative approach demonstrated how deeply the franchise had embedded itself into pop culture. Audiences were invited to explore the mythology behind a character who originally believed he was real. Although reception to Lightyear was more mixed than the main series, its existence underscores the expansive narrative potential that Toy Story unlocked. Theme park integration further solidified the franchise's legacy. Attractions based on Toy Story characters were introduced in Disney parks worldwide. Toy Story Midway Mania, for example, allowed visitors to enter a carnival-style environment themed around the characters. These immersive experiences blurred the boundary between screen and physical space, giving fans the sensation of stepping directly into Andy's world. Themed lands and character meet and greets ensured that new generations encountered Woody and Buzz beyond movie theaters. Merchandising remained a cornerstone of the franchise's expansion. Action figures, apparel, home decor, school supplies, and collectibles continued to generate strong demand across decades. Unlike many film tie-ins that fade quickly, Toy Story merchandise maintained cultural presence because the characters retained narrative significance through ongoing sequels. Woody and Buzz were not relics of a single era. They evolved alongside consumers. The influence of Toy Story also extended into the broader identity of Pixar itself. The studio became synonymous with emotionally intelligent storytelling grounded in technological innovation. Later Pixar films such as Finding Nemo and The Incredibles benefited from the credibility established by Toy Story's success. The franchise served as proof that animated films could sustain long-term character arcs and complex thematic exploration. Television adaptations and digital media further amplified the brand. Video games allowed players to control characters in interactive environments inspired by the films. These adaptations varied in quality, but they expanded the universe into participatory experiences. Children were no longer limited to watching Woody and Buzz. They could embody them. Stage adaptations and live performances also contributed to the franchise's reach. Ice shows and touring productions translated animated spectacle into physical choreography. Although these adaptations condensed storylines, they preserved the core themes of friendship and courage, ensuring accessibility for audiences who may not have seen the films. The franchise's longevity has sparked discussions about serialized storytelling in animation. Unlike standalone fairy tale narratives, Toy Story developed an evolving continuity. Each installment built upon previous emotional milestones. This serialized approach mirrored trends in live-action franchises and reinforced the idea that animated characters could age symbolically even if they remained physically unchanged. The partnership between Pixar and Walt Disney Pictures also evolved over time, culminating in Disney's acquisition of Pixar in 2006. This corporate shift ensured that Toy Story would remain central to Disney's brand identity. Woody and Buzz became ambassadors not only for Pixar but for the broader Disney animation legacy. Critically, the franchise demonstrated that sequels could achieve artistic merit rather than existing solely for financial gain. Toy Story 3, in particular, received widespread acclaim and numerous awards, proving that animated franchises could mature alongside their audiences. This achievement influenced how studios approached long-term storytelling within family entertainment. The legacy of Toy Story is ultimately defined by continuity and emotional resonance. Each expansion, whether through film, theme park attraction, or merchandise line, reinforces the central values introduced in 1995. Friendship, loyalty, adaptation, and growth remain at the heart of the franchise. New characters and settings may appear, but the core emotional framework persists. Decades after its debut, Toy Story remains a living narrative universe rather than a static cultural artifact. Children discovering it for the first time engage with a world already rich in history. Adults revisit it with layered nostalgia. The franchise's expansion has allowed it to occupy multiple spaces simultaneously: cinematic milestone, commercial powerhouse, theme park experience, and generational symbol. Toy Story occupies a unique place in modern cinema because it does more than entertain a single demographic. It creates emotional bridges between age groups, allowing children, teenagers, and adults to experience the story through different lenses. When it was first released in 1995, young viewers were captivated by colorful characters and playful adventure. Parents were intrigued by the technological innovation and subtle humor. Over time, that initial audience grew up, and their relationship with the film transformed. This evolution is central to understanding Toy Story's generational resonance. For children, Toy Story speaks directly to the imaginative experience of play. The concept that toys come alive when humans are not looking validates a private belief many children hold. It affirms that their games and invented worlds matter. Andy's bedroom becomes a familiar stage where everyday objects carry secret lives. Young viewers see their own rooms reflected on screen, reinforcing identification with the story. Woody and Buzz are not distant fairy tale heroes. They are companions who might sit on a shelf or under a bed. Children also connect strongly with the emotional stakes, even if they cannot fully articulate them. Woody's jealousy mirrors fears of losing attention to a sibling or friend. Buzz's confusion about his identity reflects moments when children question their own abilities or roles within social groups. The film presents these feelings honestly, but resolves them with reassurance. By the end, the message is clear: friendship and loyalty can survive change. For adults who first encountered Toy Story as children, the emotional experience shifts over time. Revisiting the film years later often triggers nostalgia, not only for the characters, but for the era in which it was first seen. The animation style, once cutting-edge, becomes a marker of the mid-1990s. The bedroom decor, toys, and music evoke memories of childhood spaces. This layered nostalgia deepens attachment. Viewers are not only reconnecting with the story, they are reconnecting with their younger selves. Parents watching the film with their own children experience yet another perspective. They may interpret Woody's fear of replacement as analogous to workplace insecurity or aging. They may see Buzz's identity crisis as a metaphor for adulthood disillusionment. The emotional subtext resonates differently when filtered through life experience. The humor that once felt purely playful may now carry gentle satire about consumer culture and status competition. This multiplicity of interpretation ensures that Toy Story remains meaningful across decades. Fan communities have played a significant role in sustaining this emotional connection. Online forums, social media groups, and fan art communities continue to celebrate Woody and Buzz long after the original release. Cosplayers recreate the characters at conventions, blending childhood affection with adult creativity. Homemade costumes, detailed prop replicas, and themed photography sessions reflect dedication that extends beyond casual appreciation. These communities keep the emotional energy of the film alive in contemporary culture. Cover versions of You've Got a Friend in Me appear regularly in talent shows, school performances, and online video platforms. The song, originally performed by Randy Newman, has become shorthand for loyalty and companionship. When fans reinterpret it, they participate in a shared cultural ritual. The melody carries emotional weight even when stripped of its original arrangement. Its familiarity fosters communal recognition. Toy Story also resonates strongly during life transitions. Many viewers associate the franchise with milestones such as starting school, moving homes, or leaving for college. Later sequels intensified this connection, but even the first film contains the seed of that theme through Andy's move to a new house. The anxiety of being left behind parallels human fears of abandonment during change. Because the toys ultimately remain together, the film offers comfort in moments of uncertainty. The emotional attachment audiences develop is reinforced by repetition. Toy Story became a staple of home video collections, replayed during family gatherings and quiet afternoons. Repeated viewing strengthens familiarity, allowing viewers to memorize dialogue and anticipate comedic beats. This ritualistic engagement turns the film into a shared language within households. Quotes such as "to infinity and beyond" become inside jokes passed between siblings or friends. Different cultural contexts also shape audience experience. In international markets, Toy Story was dubbed into local languages, allowing children worldwide to hear Woody and Buzz speak in familiar voices. Despite linguistic differences, the core emotions remained intact. Global audiences recognized the universal themes of jealousy and reconciliation. This cross-cultural accessibility contributed to the film's widespread affection. The emotional power of Toy Story is partly rooted in its balance of humor and sincerity. It never mocks vulnerability. When Buzz realizes he is a toy, the moment is treated with gravity. Children may feel the sadness without fully understanding its existential implications. Adults may see it as commentary on shattered dreams. In both cases, the emotional honesty invites empathy rather than detachment. The presence of Tom Hanks and Tim Allen as the voices of Woody and Buzz also contributes to lasting connection. Their vocal performances are consistent across sequels, creating continuity that strengthens familiarity. Hearing their voices again years later can evoke immediate recognition and warmth. Intergenerational viewing has become a hallmark of Toy Story's legacy. Grandparents, parents, and children can sit together and find common ground in its narrative. Unlike some children's media that feels dated or overly simplistic to adults, Toy Story maintains emotional credibility. This shared experience fosters family bonding, turning the film into more than entertainment. It becomes a cultural touchstone. The emotional attachment audiences form with Toy Story is also shaped by its conclusion. The reconciliation between Woody and Buzz provides catharsis without excessive sentimentality. The final scene, in which they face the possibility of new toys together, leaves room for imagination. Viewers are invited to project their own futures onto the characters. This openness encourages ongoing identification rather than closure. Toy Story endures not only because of its technological innovation or cultural impact, but because of its carefully constructed characters. Each major figure embodies recognizable archetypes, while also subverting them in meaningful ways. Through growth, conflict, and reconciliation, the film reshapes familiar narrative patterns into something emotionally modern. The journey of Woody and Buzz Lightyear reflects classic storytelling structures, yet their arcs feel intimate and psychologically grounded. Woody functions as the primary protagonist, and his character arc follows a variation of the hero's journey. At the beginning of the film, he exists in a stable world where he is respected and admired. As the favorite toy of Andy, he holds authority and confidence. However, this confidence is conditional. It depends on exclusivity. When Buzz arrives, Woody's sense of identity fractures. The disruption forces him into emotional territory he would rather avoid. As an archetype, Woody resembles the aging leader threatened by a rising newcomer. This pattern appears in countless myths and dramas, where a king or champion must confront the reality that power is not permanent. Yet Toy Story softens this archetype by emphasizing vulnerability rather than tyranny. Woody is not evil. He is afraid. His jealousy stems from insecurity, not malice. This nuance makes him more relatable than a traditional fallen hero. His development hinges on accountability. When he accidentally knocks Buzz out the window, he must face both external suspicion and internal guilt. This moment parallels the fall stage of the hero's journey, where the protagonist confronts the consequences of flawed action. Woody's transformation begins when he chooses to rescue Buzz despite the risk of being left behind. That decision marks a shift from self-preservation to selflessness. By the climax, Woody has embraced a new understanding of leadership rooted in empathy rather than control. Buzz Lightyear embodies a different archetype, the deluded hero who believes in a grand destiny. He enters the story with unwavering confidence, convinced that he is a space ranger on a mission. This echoes the archetype of the noble warrior or chosen one. However, the film cleverly inverts expectations by revealing that Buzz's heroism is built on misunderstanding. His belief in his own legend is sincere but misplaced. Buzz's character development centers on identity deconstruction. When he discovers that he is merely one toy among many, the shock destabilizes him. This stage aligns with the abyss, or dark night of the soul, common in mythic storytelling. Stripped of illusion, Buzz must confront who he is without fantasy. His attempted flight and subsequent fall symbolize the collapse of ego. Unlike traditional heroes who prove themselves through victory, Buzz must redefine heroism as acceptance of limitation. The eventual partnership between Woody and Buzz reimagines the rivalry archetype. Initially, they embody oppositional forces: old versus new, Western frontier versus futuristic exploration, fabric versus plastic. These contrasts mirror generational conflict. However, instead of one defeating the other, they integrate strengths. Woody retains emotional intelligence and loyalty. Buzz contributes courage and optimism. Together they form a balanced leadership dynamic. This synthesis challenges narratives that rely on dominance. Toy Story suggests coexistence rather than replacement. Supporting characters reinforce thematic dimensions through archetypal roles. Mr. Potato Head represents the skeptic. Voiced by Don Rickles, he questions authority and mocks sentimentality. His detachable features serve as a visual metaphor for adaptability and fragmentation. Rex embodies the anxious underdog. Despite being a dinosaur, traditionally associated with power, he fears he is not scary enough. His insecurity mirrors Woody's on a smaller scale, providing comedic reflection of the central conflict. Bo Peep functions as a gentle guide figure. Though she has limited screen time, she offers reassurance and perspective. In classical narratives, such a character might serve as a moral compass or emotional anchor. Her calm presence contrasts with the escalating tension between Woody and Buzz. She represents stability amid change. Sid, the neighbor who destroys toys, operates as a distorted antagonist archetype. He is not a villain in the conventional sense of seeking domination. Rather, he embodies chaos and cruelty born from misunderstanding. His destructive experiments with toys highlight what happens when imagination lacks empathy. In mythic terms, Sid represents the shadow side of creativity. He builds hybrid creatures, yet without regard for their feelings. When the toys confront him, it is less about revenge and more about reclaiming agency. The ensemble dynamic of Andy's room reflects a miniature society. The toys hold meetings, discuss threats, and negotiate hierarchy. This communal structure emphasizes collective identity. Unlike solitary heroes in epic tales, Woody's journey is embedded within community. His fall impacts others. His redemption restores group cohesion. This emphasis on relational growth modernizes the hero archetype, making it less about individual glory and more about shared stability. Toy Story also subtly reinterprets the archetype of destiny. Buzz initially believes he has a cosmic mission. Woody believes his destiny is to remain the favorite toy forever. Both assumptions prove limited. The narrative suggests that destiny is not fixed by design. Instead, purpose emerges through choice and connection. This philosophical shift aligns with contemporary storytelling, where characters forge identity rather than fulfill predetermined prophecy. The comedic archetype of the fool appears in moments of physical humor and exaggerated reaction. Yet even these characters carry emotional truth. Ham's sarcastic commentary, voiced by John Ratzenberger, grounds scenes in everyday humor. His observational wit provides contrast to grand declarations. The balance between archetypal exaggeration and realistic dialogue keeps the film accessible across age groups. What makes Toy Story's character development particularly effective is pacing. Growth unfolds gradually through conflict, not through sudden revelation. Woody's jealousy escalates in believable increments. Buzz's delusion persists long enough to feel authentic before shattering. The audience witnesses incremental shifts rather than abrupt transformation. This realism anchors archetypes in psychology. The partnership forged at the climax symbolizes narrative synthesis. Woody learns humility. Buzz learns acceptance. Neither abandons core traits. Woody remains passionate and occasionally impulsive. Buzz retains boldness and optimism. Their friendship demonstrates that growth does not require erasure of identity. It requires integration. Toy Story constructs its universe through careful attention to costume, physical appearance, and environmental detail. Although the characters are toys rather than humans in elaborate wardrobes, their design functions much like costume in live-action cinema. Every material choice, color combination, and accessory communicates personality, social role, and thematic contrast. The world building extends beyond individual figures to the arrangement of rooms, neighborhoods, and commercial spaces, creating a cohesive environment that feels both ordinary and magical. Woody's costume design immediately signals tradition and nostalgia. His cowboy hat, yellow plaid shirt, cow print vest, red bandana, and sheriff badge place him within the iconography of the American Western. This visual language carries associations of frontier heroism, leadership, and loyalty. The stitched fabric texture of his clothing emphasizes his age relative to newer toys. His slightly worn appearance hints that he has been loved and played with for years. Even the pull string on his back functions as part of his costume identity, reinforcing his role as a classic doll with preset phrases. Buzz Lightyear's design offers deliberate contrast. His sleek white suit with green and purple accents reflects late 20th century futurism. The transparent dome over his head resembles a space helmet, symbolizing exploration and protection. Flashing buttons and wing panels suggest advanced technology. Unlike Woody's soft fabric body, Buzz's molded plastic surfaces appear polished and modern. This difference in material conveys generational tension visually. Woody represents the past. Buzz embodies the future. Their costumes communicate this rivalry before any dialogue unfolds. The choice of colors also reinforces personality. Woody's warm yellows and reds evoke approachability and emotional openness. Buzz's cool greens and whites imply clarity, precision, and confidence. When placed side by side, the complementary palettes create visual dynamism. Their contrast mirrors internal conflict, while their eventual cooperation creates visual harmony. Mr. Potato Head's design plays with modularity. As a toy whose facial features detach and reposition, his appearance reflects adaptability and sarcasm. His brown plastic body is simple and rounded, allowing exaggerated expressions when eyes or mouth are rearranged. The physical comedy enabled by his detachable parts becomes part of world building, establishing that toys operate under flexible physical rules. Rex, the green plastic dinosaur, subverts expectations through design. Dinosaurs traditionally symbolize power and fear, yet Rex's rounded shape, oversized eyes, and soft color palette signal vulnerability. His costume is essentially his molded body, but the gentle curves and lighter shade of green make him appear harmless. This visual contradiction between form and personality contributes to humor and theme. Bo Peep's porcelain design introduces delicacy into the toy ensemble. Her shepherdess outfit and pastel colors create an image of calm refinement. Unlike the rugged textures of Woody or the plastic sheen of Buzz, Bo Peep's smooth porcelain surface suggests fragility. This material distinction reinforces her role as an emotional stabilizer rather than an action-oriented character. The human world of Andy's house functions as a layered environment supporting the toy society. Andy's bedroom is bright, spacious, and decorated with childlike patterns. The blue sky wallpaper with fluffy white clouds evokes limitless imagination. The bed, desk, and toy chest are oversized from the toy's perspective, transforming ordinary furniture into monumental architecture. This manipulation of scale is central to world building. Door handles become unreachable obstacles. Staircases resemble steep mountains. The environment reflects how small the toys are within a human-dominated world. Sid's house offers a stark contrast. Darker lighting, cluttered surfaces, and broken objects create an atmosphere of danger. The toys he has altered into hybrid creations contribute to an unsettling aesthetic. Mismatched limbs and mechanical parts reflect chaotic creativity. This environment suggests that imagination without empathy leads to distortion. Visually, Sid's room expands the world building by presenting an alternative household with different values. Pizza Planet introduces a commercial space outside domestic safety. Neon lights, arcade machines, and metallic textures create sensory overload. The design emphasizes consumer culture and playful excess. Claw machines filled with identical alien toys reflect themes of mass production and replaceability. This setting broadens the world beyond suburban familiarity, demonstrating that toys exist within a larger network of stores, factories, and entertainment venues. World building also operates through subtle background details. Posters on Andy's wall hint at his interests, from Western motifs to space-themed imagery. These decorations explain why Woody and Buzz coexist in the same room despite belonging to different genres. The integration of multiple toy styles reflects the eclectic nature of childhood imagination. Unlike traditional fantasy realms built around singular mythologies, Toy Story constructs a world where diverse narratives overlap naturally. The design of vehicles further enhances immersion. The moving van looms large and intimidating, its size amplified by camera angles that place viewers at toy level. The RC car combines childlike design with functional realism. Its bright colors and remote control features contribute to both action and visual continuity. Every object feels grounded in a believable suburban environment, yet animated to support adventure. Lighting design interacts with costume and environment to reinforce mood. Warm sunlight in Andy's room enhances the saturated colors of Woody's outfit. In Sid's dimly lit space, shadows fall across plastic surfaces, creating tension. During the climactic rocket sequence, sparks and fire illuminate Buzz's suit dramatically, highlighting reflective materials. The interplay between costume texture and lighting adds depth to the visual narrative. The world building of Toy Story differs from fairy tale animation because it is rooted in contemporary reality rather than distant kingdoms. There are no castles or enchanted forests. Instead, the magic emerges from perspective. The extraordinary exists within the ordinary. This grounded approach makes immersion accessible. Viewers recognize the setting, which strengthens suspension of disbelief when toys move independently. Costume and design choices also subtly comment on identity. Woody's Western attire ties him to storytelling traditions that predate modern technology. Buzz's spacesuit symbolizes aspiration toward the unknown. Their coexistence within a single bedroom suggests that imagination is not bound by era. The screenplay of Toy Story represents a turning point in animated storytelling because it treats dialogue as character-driven rather than purely plot-functional. The writing balances wit, emotional vulnerability, and structural clarity in a way that speaks to children and adults simultaneously. Rather than relying on exaggerated exposition or constant musical interruption, the script allows characters to reveal themselves through rhythm, timing, and layered humor. The result is a film that feels conversational, contemporary, and surprisingly mature beneath its playful surface. The screenplay was shaped by a collaborative team that included Joss Whedon, Andrew Stanton, Joel Cohen, and Alex Sokolow. Each writer contributed to a tone that feels sharp but heartfelt. The dialogue avoids the overly formal style often associated with earlier animated fairy tales. Instead, it mirrors the cadence of live-action comedy, filled with interruptions, sarcasm, and reactive exchanges. This approach grounds the fantasy premise in recognizable human behavior. Woody's lines reveal his personality through insecurity masked as authority. Early in the film, he speaks with confidence during toy meetings, issuing instructions and reassuring others. However, subtle shifts in tone expose anxiety. When Buzz arrives, Woody's dialogue becomes clipped and defensive. Jokes carry an undercurrent of resentment. This progression demonstrates how screenplay structure and character arc intertwine. The writing does not explicitly announce Woody's jealousy. It allows it to emerge naturally through conversational tension. Buzz's dialogue, by contrast, is formal and mission-oriented at first. He speaks as if delivering official reports, using phrases that suggest intergalactic urgency. This contrast generates humor because the audience understands that he is a toy, while he does not. Much of the early comedy arises from dramatic irony. The screenplay carefully spaces these misunderstandings so they escalate rather than repeat. Buzz interprets commercial slogans as evidence of his heroism. Woody reacts with disbelief. The back and forth dynamic establishes rhythm. Humor in Toy Story operates on multiple levels. Physical comedy exists through visual gags, but the script enhances these moments with commentary. Mr. Potato Head's sarcastic remarks function as meta-humor. His detached features allow for sight jokes, yet his verbal responses add sophistication. Rex's nervous rambling provides situational irony, especially when he attempts to appear frightening. These lines work for children because of their exaggerated tone, but adults recognize the self-aware absurdity beneath them. Recurring catchphrases contribute to identity and structure. Buzz's declaration about infinity and beyond becomes both comedic and symbolic. Initially, it represents his delusion. Later, it transforms into a sincere expression of optimism. The repetition allows the phrase to evolve emotionally. Woody's pull-string lines operate similarly. They are pre-recorded, yet they intersect with his internal state. When he hears himself repeat cheerful slogans while feeling threatened, the contrast deepens character complexity. Exposition in Toy Story is handled visually and conversationally rather than through monologue. The rules of the toy world are established organically. Toys freeze when humans enter, not because someone explains the law, but because the action demonstrates it. When Woody describes birthday party reconnaissance, the scene functions as both plot advancement and world building. The screenplay trusts viewers to infer logic from behavior. The pacing of dialogue scenes reflects careful structural design. The first act establishes equilibrium in Andy's room, allowing humor to flow lightly. Once Buzz arrives, exchanges become faster and more confrontational. The midpoint shift, when Woody accidentally knocks Buzz out the window, introduces sharper, shorter lines that heighten tension. In Sid's house, dialogue becomes more restrained. Silence and whispered planning replace constant banter, reflecting danger. This modulation keeps the narrative dynamic. Emotional dialogue peaks during Buzz's identity crisis. After discovering he is just another toy, his speech slows. Confidence drains from his voice. The screenplay avoids melodrama. Instead of lengthy lamentation, Buzz expresses disbelief in simple terms. Woody's attempts to comfort him are awkward, revealing growth through effort rather than eloquence. The understated approach allows sincerity to emerge without sentimentality. Comedic timing is essential to the film's appeal. Pauses are used strategically. Reaction shots follow bold statements. Interruptions create realism. When Buzz demonstrates supposed flight and crashes, the silence before his fall amplifies the punchline. The script coordinates with animation to ensure that dialogue and visual rhythm align precisely. Another notable element is the absence of a traditional musical number structure dominating the script. Unlike many animated predecessors, Toy Story integrates songs sparingly. Dialogue carries most narrative weight. This choice gives conversations space to breathe. The screenplay feels closer to a buddy comedy than a fairy tale musical. That genre blending expanded expectations for animated writing. The dynamic between Woody and Buzz follows a classic odd couple formula. Their verbal sparring relies on contrasting worldviews. Woody uses colloquial Western inflections. Buzz employs technical jargon. Humor arises when these linguistic styles collide. As the story progresses, their speech patterns subtly influence each other. By the final act, exchanges feel cooperative rather than competitive. This linguistic shift mirrors emotional reconciliation. The screenplay also respects children's intelligence. Jokes are not simplified excessively. References to commercial culture, space opera tropes, and Western cliches operate on subtextual levels. Adults catch the satire of advertising slogans. Children respond to surface humor. This dual coding broadens audience engagement. Structurally, Toy Story follows a tight three-act progression. The The inciting incident occurs with Buzz's arrival. Rising tension escalates through failed attempts to remove him. The central crisis emerges with Buzz's fall from the window. The second act road journey introduces obstacles that force cooperation. The climax with the rocket integrates dialogue and actions seamlessly. Lines spoken during the ascent blend fear and exhilaration, underscoring transformation. The closing scenes return to lighter humor, but dialogue carries new resonance. Woody welcomes new toys with confidence rooted in security rather than dominance. Buzz responds with relaxed self-awareness. Their banter retains playfulness, without hostility. The script resolves conflict not by silencing differences, but by reframing them. In examining Toy Story's dialogue and screenplay structure, it becomes clear that humor is not decoration but architecture. Lines build character, reveal theme, and propel plot simultaneously. The conversational tone modernized animated storytelling, proving that emotional sophistication and comedic sharpness could coexist in family entertainment. The marketing of Toy Story represented a significant turning point not only for animated films, but for the broader relationship between cinema, consumer culture, and global branding. As the first fully computer-animated feature film produced by Pixar Animation Studios and released by Walt Disney Pictures, the project carried both creative risk and commercial uncertainty. The promotional campaign needed to introduce audiences to a new visual style while convincing families that this unfamiliar technology still carried the warmth and emotional depth associated with Disney storytelling. The strategy combined traditional advertising, character-driven branding, music promotion, and extensive merchandising partnerships that reshaped how animated films were positioned in the global marketplace. Trailers for Toy Story emphasized two core elements: humor and technological novelty. Rather than focusing heavily on plot details, early previews highlighted the dynamic between Woody and Buzz. Quick exchanges, comedic misunderstandings, and high-energy action sequences were edited to create a sense of pace and accessibility. Audiences were shown glimpses of the toys moving when humans were absent, immediately presenting the central premise without lengthy explanation. At the same time, promotional materials subtly referenced the groundbreaking computer animation, signaling that this film was visually unlike anything seen before. Yet the tone avoided technical jargon. Instead, it framed innovation as magic. Character design played a crucial role in branding. Woody's cowboy hat silhouette and Buzz's wingsuit were instantly recognizable, making them ideal for posters, packaging, and toy replication. The simplicity and clarity of their shapes translated well into logos, lunchboxes, and apparel. Unlike more intricate fantasy designs, these characters were easily reproduced across product categories. This adaptability supported the rapid expansion of merchandise following the film's release. Toy lines became central to the marketing ecosystem. Action figures, plush dolls, talking replicas with pull strings, and themed playsets flooded stores. The concept of toys based on a movie about toys created a self-referential commercial loop. Children who watched the film could then reenact scenes using physical versions of the same characters. This blurred the line between narrative world and consumer product. It also extended the film's presence into everyday play, reinforcing emotional attachment. Fast food partnerships amplified visibility. Limited edition figurines included in children's meals introduced the characters to families who might not yet have seen the movie. These cross-promotions connected cinema to routine experiences, making Toy Story part of weekly habits. Themed packaging, collectible cups, and restaurant displays transformed dining spaces into temporary extensions of the film's universe. The soundtrack also functioned as marketing. Songs written and performed by Randy Newman received radio play, particularly the song, "You've Got a Friend in Me." Its warm, nostalgic tone appealed not only to children but to adults who associated Newman's style with earlier eras of popular music. The song's repetition in commercials and television appearances reinforced the emotional identity of the film. Music videos and televised performances extended reach beyond theatrical audiences. Television advertising targeted multiple demographics. Daytime programming highlighted the film's playful energy for younger viewers, while evening talk show appearances by cast members and behind-the-scenes segments introduced parents to the creative innovation. Interviews emphasized the collaborative relationship between Pixar and Disney, presenting the project as both technologically revolutionary and emotionally sincere. Global reach was achieved through careful localization. Voice actors were cast in various countries to ensure cultural accessibility. Translated dialogue maintained humor while adapting idiomatic expressions. International poster designs preserve core imagery while incorporating regionally recognizable marketing aesthetics. This adaptability allowed Toy Story to resonate across diverse audiences without losing narrative coherence. Retail environments were transformed through themed displays. Department stores constructed Toy Story sections with cardboard cutouts of Woody and Buzz towering above shelves. Electronics stores showcased clips-on television screens to demonstrate animation clarity. Bookstores featured companion storybooks and activity guides. This multi-platform approach reinforced brand recognition across consumer spaces. The marketing campaign also capitalized on the novelty of computer animation in press coverage. Feature articles discussed the making of the film, highlighting its digital artistry. Yet these discussions were framed in human terms, focusing on storytellers and animators rather than abstract software. This emphasis reassured audiences that technology served narrative rather than replacing it. Branding extended beyond products into theme park integration. Attractions and character meet and greets at Disney parks incorporated Woody and Buzz into live experiences. Visitors could take photographs, watch parades, and purchase exclusive merchandise. These immersive encounters strengthened cross-generational appeal, turning film characters into physical presences within shared family vacations. The visual identity of Toy Story remained consistent across platforms. The bold, colorful logo with playful typography conveyed energy and accessibility. Packaging often featured bright blue backgrounds reminiscent of Andy's wallpaper, reinforcing continuity between film imagery and retail presentation. Such coherence ensured that even small promotional items felt connected to the cinematic world. Over time, marketing strategies adapted to evolving media landscapes. Home video releases introduced additional campaigns emphasizing repeat viewing. Television spots encouraged families to own the film on VHS, highlighting bonus features and sing-along elements. Later DVD editions expanded interactive content, inviting audiences to explore behind-the-scenes footage and games. Each release phase revitalized the brand for new generations. The film's branding also intersected with educational and community initiatives. Toy Story-themed reading programs and school events use characters to encourage literacy and creativity. This approach framed the brand as supportive of development rather than purely commercial. Aligning the characters with positive values strengthened public perception. Merchandise waves evolved seasonally. Holiday-themed editions of toys, pajamas, and decorations integrated Woody and Buzz into annual traditions. This cyclical marketing sustained relevance beyond the initial theatrical run. Children who grew up with the film encountered the characters repeatedly during birthdays and celebrations, embedding them into memory. Toy Story occupies a pivotal position in the evolution of animated cinema. To understand its significance fully, it is essential to compare it with earlier animated classics, contemporary releases of its era, and later works from both Pixar Animation Studios and Walt Disney Animation Studios. Through this comparative lens, Toy Story emerges not merely as a successful family film, but as a foundational shift in storytelling philosophy, visual design, and audience expectation. Prior to Toy Story's release in 1995, feature-length animation was largely defined by hand-drawn techniques perfected over decades. Classics such as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Cinderella, and The Lion King relied on fairy tale structures, musical numbers, and romantic arcs. These films emphasized grand spectacle, elaborate villainy, and mythic settings. Their narratives often revolved around destiny, royalty, and clear moral binaries. Heroes were virtuous, villains were menacing, and songs functioned as primary storytelling devices. Toy Story diverged from this tradition in several key ways. First, it abandoned the fairy tale template in favor of a contemporary suburban setting. Instead of castles or enchanted forests, the central environment is a child's bedroom and neighborhood. The magic does not arise from spells or mythical creatures, but from the hidden life of ordinary objects. This shift grounded fantasy in everyday reality, making the story feel intimate rather than epic. Second, the film minimized the presence of a traditional villain. Sid functions as an antagonist, yet he is not driven by conquest or power. He is a misguided child rather than a symbol of pure evil. This departure from the archetypal villain of earlier Disney films signaled a broader narrative philosophy. Conflict in Toy Story stems from internal insecurity and misunderstanding rather than external malevolence. The primary tension between Woody and Buzz is emotional, not physical. This inward focus marked a maturation in animated storytelling. Visually, the transition from hand-drawn animation to full computer-generated imagery represented a technological revolution. While earlier films like The Lion King achieved sweeping landscapes through painted backgrounds and layered cells, Toy Story created depth and perspective through digital modeling. Surfaces reflected light realistically. Camera movement felt fluid and unrestricted by physical animation stands. This new dimension expanded cinematic language within animation, enabling dynamic tracking shots and complex staging that resembled live-action cinematography. Yet the film did not abandon tradition entirely. In comparison with musicals like The Lion King or Beauty and the Beast, Toy Story reduced the number of diegetic musical performances, but retained emotional scoring. Instead of characters breaking into elaborate ensemble songs, music underscored relationships. This subtle integration aligned the film more closely with buddy comedies than with operatic fairy tales. The balance between dialogue-driven humor and thematic songs demonstrated that animation could thrive without relying heavily on Broadway-inspired spectacle. When compared to later Pixar films such as Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, or Inside Out, Toy Story appears structurally simpler yet philosophically foundational. Finding Nemo expanded emotional stakes through epic oceanic adventure. The Incredibles blended superhero genre conventions with family drama. Inside Out explored abstract psychological landscapes. Each of these films built upon the template Toy Story established: character-driven conflict, layered humor for adults, and themes that resonate beyond childhood. In terms of representation, Toy Story reflects mid-1990s cultural norms. Its central cast is predominantly male-coded, with limited female presence. Later animated films increasingly emphasize diverse protagonists and broader social perspectives. However, Toy Story's contribution lies in shifting focus from romantic destiny to platonic friendship. This thematic pivot influenced subsequent films across studios. Narratives about unlikely partnerships, internal growth, and emotional intelligence became more common in family entertainment. Comparing Toy Story to contemporaneous non-Disney animation reveals further distinctions. During the 1990s, studios experimented with darker tones and satire in projects like The Nightmare Before Christmas or Antitrust. Though Antitrust is not animated, it reflects the era's fascination with technology narratives. Toy Story positioned itself differently. It embraced technological innovation without cynicism. Rather than portraying digital advancement as threatening, it celebrated creativity and collaboration. This optimistic stance shaped public perception of computer animation as accessible and emotionally rich. Thematically, Toy Story reframed the concept of obsolescence. Earlier animated classics often centered on overcoming external adversity. Toy Story confronted the fear of being replaced. This modern anxiety resonated in an era of rapid technological change. Woody's insecurity mirrors broader societal concerns about progress and relevance. By resolving this fear through friendship rather than elimination, the film proposed coexistence as a value. This philosophical nuance distinguished it from more binary narratives of triumph and defeat. In examining animation style, one can trace lineage from Toy Story to subsequent CGI-dominated cinema. While early digital textures now appear comparatively simple, the film established principles of exaggerated expressiveness within three-dimensional models. Animators studied live-action performance to imbue plastic surfaces with warmth. This fusion of caricature and realism became a hallmark of Pixar's aesthetic and influenced competitors globally. Internationally, Toy Story also shifted expectations for what animated features could achieve commercially. It demonstrated that audiences would embrace original stories not based on established fairy tales or literary adaptations. This opened pathways for studios to develop proprietary intellectual properties rather than relying solely on public domain narratives. The philosophical contrast between Toy Story and earlier Disney Renaissance films also extends to tone. Where Beauty and the Beast embraces operatic romance and theatrical spectacle, Toy Story favors conversational intimacy. Its humor is often dry and self-aware rather than broad and melodramatic. This tonal shift anticipated the sensibilities of 21st century animation, which increasingly integrates irony and emotional subtlety. Ultimately, Toy Story represents both continuity and disruption. It honors the tradition of heartfelt family storytelling while redefining how those stories are told. It replaces kingdoms with bedrooms, sorcerers with space rangers, and villains with vulnerabilities. It transforms animation from painted illusion into digital immersion without sacrificing warmth.